the Zambia implementation status on the Glasgow Leaders Declaration on Forest and Land Use is very important for us. And as you are aware, that our head of state, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, was among the leaders who signed this declaration. And we're having a target of 2030 to achieve this, which means that we do have a number of things that we need to do to achieve this. And for us to do that, we also need to have adequate resources. And we request that all cooperating partners, stakeholders, must come on board, including the young people. As you can see, I'm also a young person. Yeah, so it's very key that we come up with different interventions. Just to also add that this meeting is very important for us because the initiative was developed in 2020, in 2021, and we started implementation in 2022. And it is an initiative that is falling under the Stopt The Chop Campaign that is being funded by the US Embassy and the ZUAIR. And the reason why we initiated this, because we noticed that deforestation rate in Zambia is so alarming and it's quite a huge challenge for us. And it is very important that we need to collectively identify resolutions and actions that we can do to actually address this issue. And then in 2021, as you're all aware, CEJ hosts an event which we call the EPD, which is the Environmental Protection Dialogue, which we launched in 2020, October. And in 2021, the theme and the focus of that EPD was focusing on ecosystem restoration. That is also looking at biodiversity and forestry. And among the resolutions was to ensure that how can we see that the implementation of the Glasgow Leaders Agreement is implemented. And it was agreed upon that in this year, 2023, we needed to review or we look at what we have done as a country, what efforts are being done as a nation from all stakeholders. That includes government, cooperating partners, private sector, CSOs, the members of parliament, and the young people, because it's calling for all of us to actually do something to achieve this goal. It should not be, it's not just something that should be done by government, but all of us as citizens, as partners, we need to actually contribute to achieving this goal. So maybe just to speak about the purpose for this meeting, and I'm sure in the speeches to be made and the presentations, we'll be able to appreciate more the efforts that are being done by the partners and government. So the main purpose for us is just for us to understand where are we? Have we developed a framework in implementing this, in achieving the goal? What efforts are being done by government in achieving this goal? What efforts are being done by cooperating partners and as organizations like us to achieve this goal?
As an association, we are committed to participating and advancing the implementation of the Glasgow Declaration on Forests and Land Use through unwavering support to initiatives such as the Stopt The Chop Campaign, which is supported by the Zambia-United Exchange Alumni Association and funded by the US Department of State, Office of Exchange and Cultural Affairs, through the American Mission in Zambia. Guest of honor, we are happy to note that the Stopt The Chop campaign is a brainchild of Magima Palomwape, who is also not just the executive director of the organization that has gathered us here today, but as also an alumni of the Zambia-United Exchange Alumni programs. The Center for Environment Justice has done commendable work in the implementation of this project in Muchinga province, the model of educating communities on the dangers of climate change due to cutting down of trees, mobilizing traditional leaders, government officials, elected officials, the youth, and other sections of the society to dialogue and have a buy-in on the issue of environmental degradation is one that we can attest to being effective as it brings together all the key players to champion behavioral change.
Thank you very much for inviting the EU Thank you very much for the participation, for a very different but very important complementary stakeholders that at this meeting. I want to thank particularly the Center for Environmental Justice that since I've been here in Zambia, it has profiled itself as an organization that is able really to convey very interesting high-level meetings for dialogue between civil society, cooperating partner, and clearly also the government, traditional leaders. And I think this is a very welcome space for us as a cooperating partner and donor, because we want to be in touch with the constituencies and also for with the communities that are going to be and are benefiting from our collaboration. Is also an opportunity to reflect, because we are always very busy. We have a lot of competing priorities, and we need sometimes this space.
We are happy to be part of this conversation, and we hope that going forward, that you will recognize this caucus as a key stakeholder, even in engaging us, so that even when we have issues to do with appropriation of the budget, as members of parliament, we can help various stakeholders bring their concerns to the fore on what amounts are being allocated in the budget for various issues, which include allocations in green economy and so forth. That center around this conversation. We are partners with you, and sufficient to say that so far we've had various engagements. Members of the caucus do attend various conferences that border on climate.
I have been informed that the Center for Environmental Justice is implementing a project called the Stopt The Chop Campaign with support from the government of the United States of America and the Zambia-United States Exchange Program. The main goal of this initiative is to reduce deforestation and forest degradation and help improve the forest dependence communities through sustainable management. The Zambian government remains committed to the Glasgow Declaration on Forests and Land Use and considers the declaration as a critical step in recognizing forests as critical in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement. The forestry sector in Zambia is very important for national development and human welfare. Forests provide a variety of benefits, which include food, fuel, wood, building materials, and medicines.
Today we gather not to just acknowledge the importance of forests and land resources, but to translate our shared commitment and concrete action. The Glasgow Declaration must serve as a catalyst for transformative change, empowering nations to implement effective strategies and policies that address deforestation, land degradation, and unsustainable land use practices. We must embrace innovative approaches that prioritize sustainable forest management, ecosystem restoration, and conservation of biodiversity.
Contributions to turn into bankable projects for investments by public and private sector. Number two, mechanisms for youth action. We need to support youth climate resilient innovation. There are a number of youths that have stepped up and they are trying by their strength to innovate and think around what they can do to restructure our energy base in terms of the impacts on forest resources. So we need to strengthen that. And the third action coming from our intervention under the Stopt The Chop campaign is support for finance mobilization. These resources must be plentiful enough to create a real incentive for developing countries to prevent deforestation, number one, and support farmers in transitioning to sustainable land use practices. That is not only farmers there. Remember, the space is big. in terms of land use, there are other players that come in. So we need sustainable measures that can be considered on how we are going to utilize our land resources.
Jointly, we are protecting quite a big landscape, about 1,400 square kilometers. We have provided resource for forest guards, honorary forest guards. Those have been deployed and we are seeing benefits. The work that is there now is to create market linkages from the non-wood forest products that are harnessed from these protected areas. And we are looking at value addition, and we are looking at all other elements to the extent that the MOU should reach a stage where it is mature and it will be able to sustain itself beyond the funding from the mining operation.
From the time the declaration was made, what are the implementation strategies government has put in place? From the time we have been dealing with all these issues, I think the previous presenters did highlight on the efforts that have been done. The role of government is to have a compendium of statistics and also get the reporting of what is coming from the various actors put together, and then we do the national reporting. We are aware that there are a number of organizations that are dealing with issues to reduce deforestation, awareness raising, and also law enforcement by other institutions, including forestry. But all that has to be packaged and reported on the efforts we are doing. Now, you may be aware that under the declaration, Glasgow Declaration, one of the issues that was agreed upon in 2020 was that we need to reduce the greenhouse gas emission, mostly as a result of many other sectors, including agriculture and forestry. So in order to do that, there are 4 thematic areas that were agreed before the Glasgow, which emanates from the UNFCCC guidelines on how to deal with the issues of reducing emissions from deforestation and degradation in the country. It was agreed that for a country to get into reducing of emissions from deforestation or these deforestation challenges, a country needed to have a strategy. Zambia has a strategy, and it was done much earlier to deal with all this. What strategy to literally, what are we going to do to make sure that we reduce degradation and deforestation? So Zambia has a strategy in place. I'm sure most of us have it. If we don't, we will share as a ministry. The next thing, the previous slide, and in order to make sure that you report correctly on what is happening, we needed to come up with a national monitoring, reporting and verification system to deal with all this. And we needed to come up with the what we call the safeguards. Safeguards are what we use to ensure that whatever action we are taking, we don't harm the communities, we don't harm the beneficiaries of what is happening within the sector. So those are the 4 key deliverables that were needed in order to bring any idea of how we are going to reduce and ensure that we are in line with what was going to take place. And in doing so, cordial relationship with other government and other non-state actors was key, because in order to address these challenges, we needed to have everyone on board. Today we are talking about Stopt The Chop by CAG and many other organizations that have also different activities and also themes on how they are trying to be party to address some of these challenges that are there.
In Zambia specifically, what are we going to do already? We are having, and here I have my colleagues here, we are having some flagship projects. One is very important, sustainable agriculture for forest ecosystems. SAFE is part of a larger program of 26 million with other countries that are exporting to Europe, 4.1 million. For Zambia, it's really addressing the regulation and in value chains. We have another project implemented by CIFOR on agroforest, biodiversity and climate, also promoting diversification of economy and value chains. More importantly, not more important, but equally importantly, I would say we have a so-called Nexus program that is about to start, 45 million, implemented by different partners with technical assistance in the Forest Department, where we will have also included in this program 12 million euro for forest and biodiversity.
we have a shared commitment in this room by the stakeholders that have been represented that the ideals contained in the declaration are real and they are responding to the current issues, not only at international level, but also in Zambia. Secondly, we are saying that we need to improve on the engagement of the local communities in as much as we try to promote forest conservation and sustainability. What is it that we are going to do to promote alternative livelihood so that they are not left out? We cannot always just say stop, stop. But what will they do even when we say stop? That was, I think, a strong statement even from the guest of honor. We are also saying that we need to establish strategies of communication on how we'll be sharing information from amongst ourselves as stakeholders, but ultimately we need a unified platform where this information would go, and in this case it would be government, because government reports at that international level on what Zambia is doing so far with the declaration. So we are saying, as different stakeholders in our different capacities, whatever we are doing, contributing to the declaration, there is need to inform government or create some sort of communication strategy that can help also government to a greater extent get all the information on ground on what is happening in the country in terms of fulfillment of the declaration. Thirdly, if not fourth, there is need for sustainable financial inflows and mobilization. To actualize this, we need a lot of finances. There's issues of youths, issues of communities, issues of creating different innovations and technological systems that we can use even in forest inventories and management. Talking about forest inventories, I think that was a cry even from the director, that in terms of research, there's need for strengthened research in the forest sector so that we can strengthen on the issues of avoiding stipulations within the sector. I think it's Forest Department Director remains so far amongst one of the departments that have had stipulations and opinions over by different stakeholders, and the credible information is just left there in the gray areas because there's no one looking back to just tap into what is written so that it can be published. So communication is needed in this sector. Community radio programs, I think Siege has been doing that in different districts, can be tapped into as platforms to share information on a weekly basis on how far we are faring with forest. And then last but not the least, I think I just want to bring our attention to the value of our forest as not only a resource for economic development, but a cultural resource. Forest, in as much as they are important, once the human value to the forest is removed, the way we look at forest, others look at forest in form of timber. Others, when they look at forest, they look at them as scenery for recreation. So those different sentiments on how we regard the importance of forest, how I regard it, and how an indigenous person would regard it, and how a local community member will regard it, they are different. So we need to appreciate especially how the custodians value their forests. It's not just timber for them. It is a space where they do hunting. Now, when they lose those key things, then the importance that has been attached to forest will be lost and it just becomes a commodity for trade. So we need to uphold the value, the intricate value of forest beyond trade and economic development.
It is my honor to have been assigned to propose a vote of thanks. On behalf of the organizing committee, ActionAid, and indeed on my own behalf, I wish to extend my heartfelt thanks to you all participants for having participated fully in this meeting and for the progressive contributions and submissions. Listening to the discussions that have been going on in this meeting, I think it is clear that there is commitment from all players or sectors of society, from the private sector, from government, civil society, on the need to ensure that we promote sustainable management of forestry resources. Therefore, it is important that moving forward, we continue as stakeholders to collaborate in ensuring that sustainable management of natural resources to protect biodiversity while enhancing and securing local livelihoods for the many citizens and the future ahead by pledging to implement such commitment as the Glasgow Declaration to halt and end deforestation. It is our hope that today's deliberations have strengthened our resolve to work collectively to halt and reverse forest loss and land degradation by 2030 while delivering sustainable development and promoting an inclusive rural transformation in Zambia.
sometimes it's difficult to give closing remarks when a lot of people have spoken. But I would like to start by thanking the organizers and also thanking each one of us who is present here that have come to be present at this important dialogue to actually look at how far have we gone into the implementation of the Glasgow Declaration. I think you all agree with me here that what has come out is that we've made quite a number of strides in as far as forest landscape restoration is concerned. I think there were reports from various stakeholders here that a number of steps have taken place in as far as forest landscape restoration is concerned. And also, we've also looked at the issue of the policies that need to be revised and updated. We've been informed here that the Forest Department and through the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment, they're actually looking at revising the policies and also the Forest Act. And I think we should all take advantage of this pronouncement that has been made here, that when time comes for our engagement, we should be ready to actually submit our views and our proposals to that process. Also, I think I would like just to just remind the organizers that next time we have such kind of forums or dialogues, we should always look at the other people that are not in the room. This dialogue has been very good in that you have invited the private sector. We've seen here the private sector present. We have our colleagues from Mizu, our colleagues from the mines. But also, we need to engage very proactively with the agriculture and also the traditional leaders, because we cannot speak of forest dialogue if agriculture are not present, and we cannot speak of forest dialogue if the owners of the land, we're given statistics by the director here that very little land is under forests, formal protected areas. The majority of the land is actually under the traditional leadership. And that's where actually most of the degradation is actually taking place. So we really need to make sure that those are actually included in this kind of dialogue, because those are very important and influential in as far as deciding what happens with our forests. But I'd like just to end by buttressing what my brother Freeman and also what Christina said. The importance of forests cannot be overemphasized. I think I would like to use Christina's points in the presentation that forests actually provide a number of priceless eco services, but also, despite providing what we call priceless, they also provide a good contribution to the GDPs of many countries. So it's not just one of those resources. It is also an important resource that even defines our availability of water, defines our availability of power, and many other things. So it is important that we really need to profile the importance of forests in our day-to-day business, but also as we engage with the local communities. That said, I think this could be the key message that we have to take, that we have to implement the Glasgow Declaration. Steps have been taken, agreements have been made, resources have been made, but we can also do more to make sure that we secure particularly local resources for forest conservation. Here I would like just to remind the director of forests, in Zambia, we've been paying what we call carbon tax. I think since the 1980s or 1990s. The carbon tax was basically formulated to make sure that we provide funds for environmental management, particularly forest conservation. Up to now, I don't think the funds that are collected under the carbon tax are actually channeled towards forest conservation. And I think all of us have a duty here to remind government that it is an obligation, and we should maybe set up a kind of a dialogue or a monitoring system to make sure that at least, even if it's 50% of those funds that are collected, should actually be applied to forest conservation, so that we can see the value of forests being appreciated by many other people in the country. With those few words, I'd like to thank once more each one of you for participating and also contributing to this process, but also to wish you safe travels back to your various destinations, and may God bless and also close this important dialogue. Thank you very much.